Budgeting, part 1. Okay, we're going to take a look at budgeting. Now, budgeting is one of those topics which some people seem to think is a lot harder than it actually needs to be. So what is a budget? A budget is quite simply an agreed plan that establishes the revenue and the expenditure of an organisation which you expect to get. It's a plan. Purely what you think will come into your business. Nothing more, nothing less. Typically you do a budget on a weekly, a monthly and a yearly basis, and you would keep reviewing them and updating them, so you want them to be as accurate as possible. So let's take a look at the different types of budget that exist. There tends to be 3 types of budget that we can use. An income budget, and this shows you all the planned inflows into the business, so all the revenue sources the business should get. An expenditure budget, which shows you all the planned outgoing, so this will be your rent, your wages, your utilities, any cost the business has got, planning to spend money. And then of course lastly you've got your profit budget, which shows you how much you should make. So you would find this normally by taking away your expenditure budget from your income budget, so you'd find out what you got left, your profit figure. So you want to know what is left at the end of it all. Right, so why is budgeting important and how do you go about doing it? So you want to get a budget that's accurate and reliable, otherwise it's totally pointless. So what you need to do first is look at the objectives of the company. What does the company want to do? What are their objectives? Because otherwise there's no point setting budgets. You need to know what they want. Once you've done that and you know what you want, you need to think about market research. You need to know what levels of demand there are for the product, so you can plan your estimated revenues from your sales revenue and also your cost of sales. And you also need to know what your potential costs are going to be, so that you've got accurate figures so you can plan how much you are going to spend. Otherwise, again, it's just a waste of time. And last but not least, really, you need to work out a profit budget. You need to know how much you're going to make. If you don't know what you're going to make, then it's pointless doing the whole process. You need to know what you're going to make. So, what methods can we use to budget? There are different methods. There's lots and lots of methods out there. The ones that we typically see are the following. Objective-based budgeting. In other words, we look at our objectives and we plan to set budgets around our objectives. So if we want to do cost minimalisation, we set budgets which are looking at reducing costs. Of course, there may be a compromise to this. If we're looking to reduce costs, then we may find that our quality of our product suffers, and that can hinder our branding. Also, we might do competitor-based budgeting, where we look at our competition, we look at what prices they sell, and we may adapt our prices. Of course, that's going to affect the revenue sources we get, and maybe, again, it's going to affect what items we can buy from our suppliers and the quality that we can buy if we're going to just match ourselves against price. You could do sales revenue-based budgeting. That is purely where you look at what we want to make, and we plan out with a cost that we want to sell it at, and we see what we can make. It's as purely as simple as that. We look at the revenue and we plan out what we can do. You could do zero-based budgeting. That is where you have to get to the figure 0 by the end of the budgeting period. So, for example, in a year, when it ends, let's say April is the end of the financial year, you need to make sure that your area that you're in charge of has got a figure of 0. If you don't get to 0, you get penalised the next year. So you are encouraged to spend as much as you can to get that figure to 0. Notice there's a weakness with this whole area of zero budgeting, because it assumes that you've got to spend the money. So you could end up with waste. If they haven't spent it throughout the year, they're probably going to waste it at the end of the year. The argument for it is, though, that people are given this money because that's what you need to operate your department effectively. And last but not least, you've got previous year's budgeting, where you just look at what you spent last year and you plan your expenditure based on that. Of course, that doesn't take into account inflation, or doesn't take into account any other factors such as competition opening, or maybe even just the fact that you want to expand or grow your business, or change and diversify to new markets. So you need to consider these factors. Why do we budget? Well, it's quite obvious really. We want to plan for any financial support that we want to take advantage of. So we need to go to the bank maybe if we want a loan and say we need a loan for this period, and it's because our budget suggests we're going to borrow this money for our new expansion plans. Or we may need to say that we want to arrange an overdraft, which of course will be cheaper if we go to the bank in the first place to agree an overdraft with them. It could be that you want to manage the way and control the way we spend money. So we want to actually see how the organisation is spending money, and we want to control who spends it and what they spend it on. It can provide focus and direction for the company. Because we've got a budget, because we know how much we can spend, there is some sort of focus, target, direction that we need to work towards and try and achieve. You can empower and motivate your workforce by this, because some people can feel a sense of achievement by the fact that they're being trusted to spend money. And as you know from many of your motivational theories, it actually then increases motivation and makes the employees feel more satisfied in what they do. And last but not least, one of the more contentious points is that it will make it more efficient in the organisation if everybody in their different cost centres can manage the budget. Some people disagree with this though and say that budgeting should really be controlled by the finance department because they have the specialist expertise, which of course leads to economies of scale like financial ones and technical ones where their skill comes from. Okay, with every benefit that you get, you also get drawbacks. I mean, one of the most obvious ones that comes there from anything is lack of knowledge. You are trusting people in departments to spend money. Do they know really what they want to buy? Have the corporate objectives been communicated effectively to them? Do they really know what the business wants to do? And have they got enough knowledge to make those overall decisions that are going to link in with every department? Because yes, they may look at their own department, like marketing might spend money on their own campaign, but does that fit in with the overall objective? Does that fit in with what operations or ICT are doing? Are they spending money on two of the exact same things, which causes waste? Unforeseen changes. Things can happen. You can plan all you want, but things may happen in the future that you can't see. How flexible, how responsive can you be to make those changes? Again, that's a question that some people argue budgets don't allow. Inflation. As you know, inflation increases costs. Inflation at the moment running about 2% in the UK. So everything is going up by 2%. If you're using past years to make budgets on, think about it, the cost is going to increase by 2%. That might increase your selling price, but it'll also increase your costs. Massive effect on your business, especially your profit margins. And last but not least, it's time consuming to set budgets. Is it just a waste of time because things keep changing all the time? Or does it give you enough plan and enough structure to think about managing your finance better? This is where it tends to use ICT now to plan budgets because it's quicker, more effective, and overall it does provide that guidance for a company. Okay, hopefully at the end of that presentation you should know and be able to recall the different types of budgets that exist and the different methods used to budget. If you really understand this, you should be able to now assess the benefits and drawbacks of budgeting and then hopefully apply these examples in your exams. What I suggest you do now is, if you're happy with the content and you made some appropriate notes and you really understand budgeting now, move on to our second video we've made, which looks into more detail about management budgeting. So we cover the topic of variances, which some of you may find more difficult, and how management can make decisions based on budgeting. Don't forget, you can follow me on Twitter and on my YouTube channel. You can tweet me any questions you've got on any areas of business, and I'll cover these in any future presentations. And don't forget to check out my brand spanking new, all singing and dancing website, bebusinessbee.co.uk. Don't forget to give me a follow and a like, and I'll catch you next time.